I'm your host, Ryder Todd Smith, and today we're joined by City of Lancaster City Manager Jason Caudle and its first ever Chief of Police, Rodrick Armalin. Gentlemen, welcome to the Public CEO Report.
It's an honor to be here, and it's we appreciate what you do for us and every city out there.
Absolutely. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you, gentlemen. So let's get our, first of all, context. Jason, tell me about the City of Lancaster and how long you've been there as a city manager.
Yep, City of Lancaster's been here 16 years now. Was assistant for 10 and going on, 5 or 6 now as city manager. So it's been a long run here. Lancaster's just north of LA County, for people who don't know where it's at, and very entrepreneurial, great council who wants to change the world on a regular basis, and they enlist us to try to change it for the better.
Yep. Population of Lancaster?
170,000 people.
And you've been generally follow the contract cities model on a lot of the work that you've done historically, correct?
Yes, we have, from a contract cities perspective, we have a number of contracts. We have contracted for the LA County Sheriff's Office since the inception of the city. So it has always had the LASD as our law enforcement arm.
Awesome. All right. And Chief, tell me about yourself. What's your background?
Right. Well, I am approaching a 35-year law enforcement veteran. I try to hide these stripes because they tell that to everybody. But almost 35 years. I did the first 32 with LA County Sheriff's Department. And that was a fantastic career, multitude of assignments. I retired as a captain and was hired the very next day as a chief of police for the city of Sierra Madre. And did about 2.5, somewhere close to 3 years there, and then came on over here to Lancaster to become their first chief and develop this program.
So, and when did you arrive in Lancaster?
That would have been July of 2022.
Okay, so you've been there just over a year or so.
That's correct.
As helping the city fulfill its vision. So, I guess, tell me about this vision. I mean, to have a chief sitting there for a contract city is a unique model. And Jason, you and I have had some background to chat about some of the vision that the city has. But give me some background on this new approach to public safety services in the city of Lancaster.
Yeah, well, I think it's twofold. One is the reality is in California and LA County specifically, we've envisioned crime and crime enforcement different than we have in the past. The reality is the tools that were available to us in the past, whether it be arrest or jail, right, have frankly been taken away from us. So the twofold is, one is that we have to create a model that fits within that new societal framework. The reality is, whether you agree with it or not, it's the law of the land. Some of the things we thought were crimes and still think are crimes, we don't have the tools necessary to enforce. At the same token, the Sheriff's Department is really good using those tools, the prior tools. But as it relates to the new tools that we're going to be implementing, administrative citation process, community engagement, community involvement, that's going to be something that's going to be far better programmed or produced at a local level than would be at a county level, where you have some of the regulations and bureaucracies that bind some of their hands, frankly. The second component of that is local control. I think there's been a point in time in history where I think city councils were willing to sacrifice their public service to an elected sheriff who was enforcing the crime. And for that matter, to an elected DA that was, also incarcerating people and, doing their part of enforcement. That's changed a little bit in LA County. And the reality is we need to look at a different role as the city police, saying, hey, we got to take more local control of these aspects rather than leave it to the Board of Supervisors now in a lot of cases with regard to LA County, and to a DA that frankly isn't doing their job.
So I guess if you could then, as a little bit of background then, how does this model work then? What's the role, or maybe Chief, you can speak to that, but what's the policing model here? Because this is still hybrid. You're still going to have a sheriff contract, right? Right, Jason?
Correct. And I think when we look at it, when I tell, and I'll have the Chief talk about the details, we look at it as co-producing our police services, right? Is that there are certain functions that I think the Sheriff's Department's going to do, and there's certain functions, that I know they're going to do, and there's certain functions that we're going to do. And I think that's the co-production. At the end of the day, when you call 911 and there's an emergency, you call 911 and it goes to the Sheriff's Department. But I think some of the other softer services that we're going to be handling, and I'll let Chief talk about the details of that I think are going to what bridges and makes it a hybrid model.
Absolutely. And the word hybrid couldn't describe this any better. We're talking about having two agencies providing public safety services in the city. And as Jason mentioned, nothing that the public knows regularly and that has happened is going to change. 911, for emergencies, they'll get the sheriff's department. They need a report taken because a car was broken into the night before. They'll dial the sheriff's regular line. We're going to be a no-call, non-dispatchable police agency. So what's going to happen is that's going to give us the time to do some of the things that the sheriff's department and the deputies are frankly struggling with because of staffing issues and some of the demands that are placed upon them. We're going to do heavy community engagement, and we're also going to be able to focus on long-term root cause problems, and try and deal with those. But the other really important side of it too is as we identify these problems, these long-term issues, we'll have the ability to work on them with a multitude of resources, including some social services pieces, and try and solve those problems in that manner, and also reduce the demand on the sheriffs, hopefully reduce some of those calls for services that they're getting so much of.
So, and Jason, obviously this has been long coming. You guys have been thinking about this at the city for a while, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's been the works for, the vision has been there for a number of years. COVID hit and delayed us a little bit, but yes, it was always something that last 6-7 years we've talked about doing. And finally over the last 2 years really dug in and started.
And what I hear about the motivations behind that were a combination of some cost management, increased services, modeling some new ways to address crime trends and challenges that we're seeing across California. And then it sounds like to some extent it was concerns with the broader methodology for law enforcement in LA County and wanting to have your own approach to be able to supplement that. Is that a fair summary of the changes?
Yeah, absolutely true. And when we do the crime analytics of what our deputies are dealing with, they deal with a lot of shoplifting, right? They deal with a lot of homelessness issues. They deal with a lot of the things that every city's dealing with. And we have our most expensive unit doing that, right? They may be responding to non-emergent calls. Your car got broken into the night before. That's our most expensive and frankly, most trained and most valuable as well unit that we're sending out to take a report on a car that was broken into the night before, or sending to our Walmart or Target to deal with a shoplifting that, frankly, a lot of people, the voters of California determine it's not a crime anymore. So we have all these high-trained, high-value resources, highly costly resources that are responding to calls that people consider low priority, but they don't consider them non-priority. So the key is that let's put a different level of service onto those, and maybe we'll increase their response times, increase their availability to go to some of those other calls and deal with some of those other issues while we're handling homelessness and some of the social issues that are addressed with that, shoplifting and some of the challenges from a retail perspective that we're dealing with, to the thefts, the burglaries that are not emergent, or you're coming back from vacation, your house is broken into, those types of things that are take demand. We're even looking at, from a traffic perspective, some of these traffic reports that are being taken, non-injury collision traffic reports, don't need one of our traffic officers who are no longer enforcing their traffic laws to be out there filling out a report for a non-injury traffic collision. These are the type of things that we can come into and co-produce to create more time for our deputies to do what they do best and allow the community-minded effort to do what it does best.
So I think the term I kept hearing there was non-emergent, right? Which is a great term, and I think that explains it. So, Chief, is that the gist of where that handoff is to some extent? And I'm not into the interface question yet because I think that's a separate and more complex question that I would love to dive into. But from roles and responsibilities, it sounds like the goal is to have your effort working on the non-emergent issues to free up those sheriff deputies from LA County, correct?
That is absolutely correct. Now we will be a law enforcement agency that is in the area, and should we hear some emergency, we'll have the ability to respond to it. These will be post-certified police officers, but those calls and everything are generally going to go to the sheriff's department, the higher level emergency calls. So, and anything non-emergent, we'll be able to deal with it. But once again, we're going to be non-dispatchable, our officers. So. We'll learn of issues from the community as well as from the sheriff's department as when they can pass things along to us and say, can you take a look at this problem?
And out of curiosity, just So I'm not sure, Jason, there must have been a few cities that have contacted you to ask you about this model you're pursuing, right? Or have they all not inquired yet?
Yeah, well, I think they're still waiting and learning, right? So we've actually, our communication staff, who's amazing, I'll give them a plug there. They're actually working on taking what we're doing and putting it into some level of white paper or some kind of messaging about kind of what the model is we're doing, because some of it's all brand new, right? It's never been done. So we had a study done originally that we've kind of changed a little bit from and morphing from, and now as you hire officers, it's a different story. So as we move, we adjust based on certain factors and information. But when it's all said and done, we should have a model, and this is where our mayor, who's the and our council, who's very visionary, sees themselves as doing this on behalf of others as well. That we hopefully create a roadmap for others if they want to follow it. We're obviously in a non-competitive business, and love to share. We'd be happy to tell the story about how we succeeded.
Well, that's, partly the reason why this very podcast exists, is to kind of bring these innovative ideas to the forefront. Lord knows, in my work with you over the years in Lancaster, you guys are constantly breaking down barriers and doing new stuff. So that's why one of the reasons I was really excited to get this call on the books and have a conversation with you guys. Chief, how do you measure success? How do you know you're doing well with this new model? What are you going to be looking at?
Well, quite simply, the big part of it is going to be through community engagement. Like I said, we're going to have heavy community engagement. Our officers are going to be known as district officers. And so each one will be assigned to a district. They will work with pieces that we already have in place, which includes our community engagement team, our special projects team, and we'll do what you can imagine or what was law enforcement, where we're in the community and we want to know people by first name, and we want them to know us by first name. So we're going to seek that feedback from them in a multitude of ways, including through surveys, through continuous community meetings, a ramped up neighborhood watch program, and then we want to develop ambassadors in each of those district areas and work with them to ensure we're getting all that feedback we need. And then the other thing truly is through the sheriff's department. We've established a great relationship already, but getting that feedback from them on how we're helping with some of the long-term issues, how we're helping with the many demands that the deputies have. To give you an example, we started this already, believe it or not, and that's without hiring an officer. We learned of a location, a hotel that was just a massive draw in the sheriff's department, over 900 calls for service in a little over 2 years. And 40% of those calls were of the violent nature. And we wasted no time pulling together social services pieces, government entities, and that hotel closed down. And that's 900 calls for service, I guess somewhere around 450 calls for service a year pulled away from those deputies to free them up and do other things. So that feedback will be important as well.
We also have, we can advertise, we've got an RFP out for KPI services or key performance indicators as it relates to our police department. Is that at the end of the day, when you talk about other cities wanting to do this, they're going to want to see outcomes. And our mayor and our council is very driven as it relates to, they want to see progress and, verifiable empirical data. So we're looking for a firm to come help us do that, where we can kind of say, what was it like before? What is it like after? And so that we can have some real justifiable statistics that say response times decreased, right? Community sentiment increased, community safety increased, whatever that might be, whatever those KPIs are identified to be, and then track those, right? And track them comparatively before we existed, track them while we exist, and then that also allows us to improve in the future as well.
What I think is interesting about that too, and maybe it's a question, well, it's certainly a question for me to ask, which is, it seems to me like this could positively affect indicators for both your operations for the Lancaster function as well as for your sheriff responses too, right? So are you going to have insights into KPIs for both entities and see how they change with this implementation?
Yeah, we have access to their stats as well. But yeah, the key is, and when we talk about co-producing, and I don't want this ever not to come off at all that there's anything against the sheriff's deputies or the sheriff's department itself. They're overworked, right? We were down 30 officers at one point that weren't getting filled. They're doing two overtime shifts a week. So we see those limited overtime shifts if we can provide more response time to them. we see those response times that they're going to be able to responding to calls that matter, or I should say have a higher importance, so that lowers the response times for those. And then it increases the response times for us responding to those non-emergent burglary calls potentially, so that we're decreasing response times. Yeah, that sounds right. That's a double negative. That we're decreasing response times in all levels, right? Some of the things we respond to, but also the things that the sheriff's department is currently responding to.
Chief, is this going to be 24/7 operation on your side, or are you guys going to work like a 12-hour shift and then you're closed from 6 to 6 or something?
So we're going to have the ability to work whatever hours we need to. We're going to be flexible, but it will be a 40-hour work week. But we're going to work according to the demands of the city. And also, we want to hear from the community. We want to hear how they want to be policed and what's important to them. And we will adjust our schedule to address issues and also find better times, better locations to engage with them. And if that requires us to work on some Saturdays and Sundays, that's what's going to happen.
Community engagement is an important part. I suspect you'll find yourself sitting out there at some soccer games on the weekend or going to some community fairs or things like that, Chief, to make sure you're getting that community engagement done. So no doubt this will turn into 7 days a week of being out there, out and about with the people of Lancaster. I guess a related question then, Chief, how many people have you hired so far for this new department?
So amazingly, this is the way it goes. We are a department of one.
Okay.
But we are going through our hiring phases now. We're about to put out for our officers. That will go out and we'll start that recruitment. My second in command, my assistant chief, has also been hired. He is currently working in the civilian position as I did, or non-sworn position, excuse me, as I did. He'll be sworn in shortly. And we'll start our hiring process of the other officers.
So I guess it's fresh now, so you get to kind of make it into what you want, which is always an adventure. I'm curious, what's your strategy for your hiring strategy for ensuring kind of the officers and the civilian staff who join the team are reflective of the community, either values or interests or other diversity factors that are always, out of interest of communities.
So you know what, I appreciate you asking that, Ryder, because I got to be honest with you, in my 34 years, there's nothing more important than trying to be as reflective of your community as you can possibly be, and especially in law enforcement. So we are going to, we're reaching out to several different entities, including all the cultural entities that are in the community. We're reaching out to the churches. We're reaching out to some of the officer associations, such as the Black Peace Officers Association of Los Angeles County and the Hispanic Officers Association of Los Angeles County. But I think most importantly, what we're going to do is we're going to involve community in the selection of our officers. Mm-hmm. And we're going to have community members assist us in the selection of our officers because we want to make sure we're picking the right individuals, and we want to hear from them who they want to see and what's important to them in police officers out in the community.
Well, fair enough. I guess the proof will be in the pudding here. You got a lot of hiring and a lot of opportunity to make that happen. So, and Lord knows it's a tough environment to recruit out there. You got any innovative strategies or just too much secret sauce you don't want to share yet?
Don't have any secret sauce I want to share yet. But I think, I'll be honest with you, an incredible opportunity for law enforcement officers. And we're trying to hire experienced individuals who have already worked. And it's an incredible opportunity to come and work in an environment where you are going to be, for lack of a better term, kind of targeted enforcement. Basically, another way to put it is we'll find problems and we'll have the time to work on those with your team. And let me just add that as we find these problems, we're going to try and gain cooperation from the individuals or the locations. We're going to try that and see what we can do to get them to conform to or work in the type of pattern or live in the type of pattern that's acceptable here in Lancaster.
Yeah, I kind of mimic that as a father. I always say to my daughter, make good choices.
Correct.
Yeah, she's on the other side of the country at this point, so all I can tell her to do is make good choices because I have so much control.
Well, mine tells me to make good choices, so it is good.
Well, you probably benefit from that advice, Jason. And how about tech, right? So, Jason, again, you guys are always doing innovative things. Where do you see technology playing a role in helping you guys do things in a more innovative fashion than maybe other departments get to, especially when you're building from the ground up? What's your tech strategy?
Yeah, well, I think there's absolutely one. Absolutely, I agree completely. And Chief's been leaning in on this, and his assistant is huge in tech. Is those stats, right? Gaining and gathering every one of those stats so we can make smart decisions as relates to where we respond, how we respond. We've implemented a drone program where we have a difficulty getting the helicopter to fly up here, the sheriff's helicopter, just because of wind and availability and location. Is a drone program that's going to be city operated. It's going to be working hand in hand with the sheriff's department. Hopefully, decrease their response times, increase their safety, be able to handle some of these parties we're dealing with. That you can come in with a drone instead of walking deputies into these large, parties and things we deal with. We've even got the tech from a predictive and analytics perspective and seeing what the future holds. And we talk about some of the tactics, and we've had some issues with parties. I'm sure everybody has, where these large parties rent these places, and then before you know it, you have a problem. It's actually going online and doing some of this online pre-research to identify these locations. When we bring that technology in with our community service officers, as well as some of our public outreach people, it's just this multitude of technology that we can engage in and then help direct some of the enforcement efforts of the sheriff's department as well. They still do an amazing job, but they got, it's never better than a 911 call information. But if we can get stuff to them sooner, get some predictive analytics in there, get some key performance indicators, drone program. We got cameras on our streets now, these flock cameras that monitor license plates. We've got more coming. We've got neighborhood watch programs that are allowing people to install cameras in their neighborhoods that we can see from a remote point from our phones, from Chief's phone. He can watch these neighborhoods. So there's a whole lot of this tech going in as well that's going to hopefully have an impact in crime.
Yeah.
Ryder, if I can add, I'll just say, I've worked for a multitude of city councils and mayors, especially in my time with the sheriff's department, working different stations. And I've never worked for a council and a mayor who's open to doing whatever it takes. And like Jason mentioned, those flock cameras, when I went and said these will help us, it was a snap of a finger, and they said make it happen. And those things have been instrumental in helping us deal with some of the crime issues. Also want to add, we're building an intelligence crime assessment center, which is going to allow us to not only sew in all these technologies, but also pay attention to what's going on out there, not just in this region, but in the world as well.
Right. Yeah. So that when people want to import their crime into Lancaster, you can try to see it coming, I assume.
Correct.
I'm curious about the drones. So I had a wonderful conversation with the mayor of Beverly Hills about some drone work that they've been doing down there. And they've been supplementing their police force with private security. And then they've also been flying drones around there to kind of intervene in crime. I don't know if either of you have had a chance to tour the Beverly Hills approach, but do you anticipate this drone being up 24/7, or is this the kind of deal where you just dispatch the drone when you got a kind of an item of interest, or what's the strategy with the drone? If you're allowed to disclose that, I don't want to reveal too many secrets, but.
No, absolutely not a problem. We can disclose that. And yes, we have visited Beverly Hills and looked at their program. They've got a fantastic program down there. So ours is going to be a little bit different, and we are ready to go. We've developed a mobile platform where our drones are going to be positioned on a vehicle, and those vehicles will be driving around. We're anticipating providing 16 hours of service, as Jason mentioned, because of wind. Getting the helicopter up here has been a problem for the deputies, for the sheriff's department. And so we wanted to provide some air support to these deputies. So we developed this program, and like I said, we'll be able to give 16 hours. And the beauty of it is that they will be out and about in the community. And when they get a call or a need for a drone to deploy, they drive out and get within 3 miles of that location and can deploy immediately and get those deputies rapid air support. Also, as Jason mentioned, they'll have the ability to shoot whatever image they have down to the back of that vehicle, which is going to have a large screen in it so that it can go to a command post, or we can direct it to sheriff's department desk or their command post at their leisure.
Okay. So you're envisioning that their airport, so to speak, is going to be a mobile truck or some such thing, and that's going to be staffed by Lancaster folks?
That's correct. In fact, it is already developed and ready to go.
All right.
We're doing deployments now with the city. In fact, so and the sheriff's department is getting some policies and things together, and once they do that, we expect them to let us deploy our program with their deputies.
Interesting. So I think we've heard a ton of conversation here about supplementing the sheriff's department, collaborating with the sheriff's department. You just started touching on that point of interface, right, between what you guys are doing and how that information gets to deputies in real time, or if you're doing your kind of crime intelligence network work, how are you getting that information into the hands of sheriff deputies? Like, you got there's always the risk in local government of these silos that get created. How are you guys going to break down those silos, or what does that interface look like for y'all?
Well, thankfully, the relationship between the city and the sheriff's department has been great long before I got here. So I walked into that, and the other good thing is being a 32-year sheriff's department veteran. I know many of the members of the sheriff's department, including at this station. So our relationship is great already. So the communication and the sharing of information is already happening. We do not expect to see any problems getting in the way of that. And we have regular meetings with the sheriff's department. I have regular meetings with their command staff at the station. So I think the collaboration is going to be fine. And I think you're hitting the nail on the head when you say the most important thing is that we continuously share information. And that's what's going to happen.
So it sounds like part of that integration or interface, I mean, just on a tactical level, is some ability to collaborate in technology, for example?
I'm sorry, say that again?
So it sounds like some of that collaboration is going to be rooted in your capacity to span data systems or networks or share information, right? From just a tactical level of, like, for example, you were talking about broadcasting down an image from a drone. So there's going to be a methodology working out how to give that link to a sheriff deputy who's on a laptop or an iPhone in their car, or is it going to be dependent upon them accessing a console with your mobile base station for the drone?
So that portion of it will depend on the sheriff's department and who they want to give access to. Once we start to work together on that, we'll be open to letting them decide who they want it to go to. I'd imagine it would definitely be their desk. And then from there, they'll have to decide whether they want deputies in the field to have it or go to the watch commander or the watch sergeant.
Yeah. And I guess, Ryder, let me use the example Chief said about the hotel, too, is that in collaborating with them, the sheriff's department was dealing with this problem, right? And their tools were law enforcement, right? Arrest.
Right.
And many times you go to a hotel, you arrest somebody, they're going to be back at their hotel before you even get them back. So their tools were taken away from them in the deal with this hotel. Where we bring in those additional tools. We brought in code enforcement. We brought in building inspection. We brought in the Department of Board of Equalization on some of the sales tax issues. You know, you bring in a multitude, the Department of Public Health. We start bringing in all these different resources to effectuate change on the hotel owner, frankly, who is running a bad operation. And then we solve that problem that way, where traditionally those tools may not be available to the sheriff's department to go do that, or the time wasn't available to do that. So I think those are a couple types of way we interface, I think, are going to make it better for everybody.
Right.
The citizens, the sheriff's department, and some of the business owners.
What does it mean that you're going to have sworn officers? Well, as a layperson, I'm not sure how to equate what the significance of that is. I assume that, like in my head, naively speaking, I assume that means they get to carry a gun, but maybe that's not even correct. So why is it important that they're sworn? Why you have, because I assume you'll end up, Chief, with a mix of sworn and non-sworn people working as civilians working in your department is the vision. Is that correct?
So yes, just like with every single police department out there, you're going to have non-sworn employees, and you're going to have your sworn officers. So first, your sworn officers are post-certified police officers that have all the powers granted to them within the state and the county and the city to do law enforcement work. So, and that's what our officers will be, the same police officers that you see out on the streets in your neighborhoods. We'll also have non-sworn folks who work for us. And we've already done that. In fact, one step we took immediately in realizing that the Sheriff's Department was having some problems with response times in the community. We wasted no time hiring community service officers. We actually call them law enforcement technicians, and they're working with the Sheriff's Department now, being trained, and these folks will go out and be dispatched to those lesser level calls, basically report calls, and try to lower those response times, and again, free up the deputies so they can deal with other issues. So that's an example of our non-sworn employees.
And when you add that, when you talk about response times, and I know people listening probably know this, but is this concept of that community safety feeling, right? If they got to wait 5 hours for a deputy to respond on a burglary call, they're not going to feel very safe. And when the deputy gets there, he says, "Sorry, I'm late. I had 15 other calls ahead of you." They're not going to feel pretty safe. They come home 30 minutes later and they've got one of our people there taking a report, sharing with them, being good customer service, saying, we may not be able to find this person, but we didn't happen in our presence, whatever that might be, but we're going to take a report for you for your insurance. We'll do some, investigation. We'll share that with the deputies so they know that there's maybe a trend in burglaries or that neighborhood needs to be watched. But the response times will be far greater, and that impacts communities' feeling of safety.
Yep.
That I think just we can't measure, but I think it has an impact.
Yeah.
Ryder, if I may, there's one more very important piece that we haven't mentioned, and I think this makes us extremely unique. So the city we are hiring the department. We are hiring social services piece or employees. So we're talking about having individuals who are trained and having an expertise in things like Department of Children and Family Services, the work they would do, mental health, homelessness, and these folks will work with our officers to deal with issues. An example is, let's say the Sheriff's Department makes us aware of a house that they're going to 20 times a year for domestic violence. Our officers and those our social service employees will be able to work with that family, try and figure a way to fix the issues in there and stop that draw on the Sheriff's Department and help that family deal with the problems. So that's something that I think is extremely unique about what we're doing here in Lancaster. And those folks will also strengthen the relationship with the existing county, city, and state entities that do that work already, and hopefully that relationship is so strong that they're thinking Lancaster, and we're getting them up here to help us as much as possible.
Yeah, so that actually, Chief, that was inspiring me for a question I want to ask Jason follow up to. And I'm not trying to stir a pot here, but I am curious, child protection services and some of those other social services are typically LA County services, right? In most cities. So you guys are putting your toe into some additional areas of customer support for as you noted, very good reasons, right? For response time and speed of collaboration. But is that a fair assessment that you're having to kind of fill in a gap that just exists in terms of speed to delivery in the community right now for you guys up there in Lancaster?
Yeah, well, I think it's filling in a gap, but it's also encouraging them and participating with them to participate, right? So we have every city has a differing relationship with the county and the county services. Is we want to deepen that relationship with those folks. We may have to bring on some personnel ourselves to do that, but to bridge that line of communication and say, hey, we need your help, right? Sometimes that squeaky wheel does get more grease, right?
Right.
Is if the problem isn't identified, then maybe they don't provide the services that way. But we need to identify the problems to them to make sure that they do the job that they're tasked with as well. There's, again, fantastic people over there in mental health and in child protective services, and they may say, hey, you know what, we may solve a problem for them too. Right? They might say, you know what, if we just had this level of service from a law enforcement perspective, you might solve our problem. And vice versa. Hey, if we could have this team up here to help us do this, we could solve that problem. So it's a collaborative effort, no question. But it's the opportunity to say, hey, we're here, we're investing in this problem, we're trying to solve this problem, we need your help to do that. And we're willing to put resources back behind that as well.
Right. From a fiscal perspective, Jason, I'm just curious, do you have, how did you model this out from a fiscal perspective, right? Because obviously there's cost for standing up a department and doing this work. Some of it may be paid for by offsetting some of the sheriff contract or by reducing the rate of increase in the sheriff contract. Some of it may just be, yeah, we're going to have to spend more money, but we're going to have better customer service. How was that kind of mapped out for you guys from a financial perspective?
Yeah, about 3 years ago, I guess it was last election, 2 years ago, we passed the citizens passed Measure LC, which was a 3/4 cent sales tax. And the overwhelming response we got from that process, and the city council got from that process, was law enforcement was their highest priority. So when you look at that new revenue stream that the citizens, tasked us with, right? They didn't task us to put it in the bank. They tasked us with providing better services. And law enforcement was obviously the highest priority. It's the highest priority of our council. It's the highest priority of our community. And when you looked at sheriffs hiring, right? One, they're very expensive. Two, they were unavailable, right? We had 30 vacancies. We didn't have the opportunity to hire more deputies, nor do we think hiring more deputies would actually impact some of the problems we were facing. So the next logical solution is let's figure out this hybrid model, right? And that's how we did it. And the reality is you set a budget based on a certain available funds and you build that budget. My history is I've started our own PD in a previous city. I worked in Tehachapi. And the reality is what's going to happen is that there's going to be more investment, right, in public safety because it's a local connection. And I'm going to see that budget from a budget perspective. There's going to be a higher priority placed on that, which is good. And hopefully those outcomes are going to be metered and make sure that we're getting our money's worth, or the citizens at that point who approve this new tax are getting their fair share of their money back and their impact to their outcomes of their quality of life as a result of it.
So it sounds like, first of all, congratulations for the citizens to trust their local government to give you that additional sales tax increase to fund an operation, whatever you ended up doing with it. In this case, funding an operation for public safety. Secondary point being, it sounds like net, your overall budget for public safety between the sheriff's contract and this in-house operation is definitely, you're going to be spending more than you would otherwise. But the point is you're going to deliver bigger, better, stronger services with a stronger customer service bent. And ultimately, the goal is reduce crime, right? Like that's fundamental kind of goal number one, I would presume, from the overall effort.
Absolutely. And then the message we get from council, there wasn't any intent to cut out sheriff's department and build this on the back of what our existing contract is. We're understaffed there. We're probably still understaffed now. The reality is we need more investment in it, not less investment. So that's been the message that we get from our city councils. We're investing more in law enforcement, not less.
Right. Ultimately, I guess what I'm also hearing too is it sounds like Lancaster remains just as committed to the sheriff contract relationship model as you always have been. This is purely a supplement addition to what you want to get done there in the city.
Accurate statement.
Any other exciting programs, initiatives, ideas, kind of thought things that happened during the course of this process that you'd love to share with the broader community and the local government world?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Well, we mentioned quite a few things already, like our Intelligence Crime Assessment Center, ICAC. But we're also bringing on, or we've actually hired already, a special projects team, and that works in collaboration with the Sheriff's Department as well, where when we identify some of these issues, say we have a prostitution or a sex trafficking problem in the area, our special projects team is able to pull together the resources necessary to deal with that. Go out there and try and help those victims, some of those women out there who are victims of sex trafficking, and try and solve that problem in a collaborative effort. An example of how this worked for us one time is we had already learned, our special projects team learned of an illegal after-hours strip club. And with the help of the Sheriff's Department, we were also able to identify that there was some violence associated with that place, unpermitted, unlicensed, operating into the wee hours of the morning. And we pulled together the necessary resources, including the State Employment Department and all these other entities that work on problems dealing with labor. And we also went in with our code enforcement, our Department of Health, and other entities, and we're able to shut that place down. So our special projects team is important. Other cities are using crime prevention through environmental design. And that's a process where folks are trained up to go into locations and basically harden the target or talk to them about ways to make it less appealing to crime. Well, we sent several individuals to that training so that we can have enough folks to go out, not just to businesses, but to residents as well, and provide information. So, and we're looking at developing an agency model to address long-term root causes with homelessness, which we want to include kind of a 3-tiered housing solution or solution to get these folks off the street, where the first thing is emergency housing, and then transitional, where they're going to learn things and be taught job skills, and then hopefully move them to where they have the ability to purchase their own home. So that's a program we're looking at developing for this city as well. So there's many other things that we're bringing that are different, but like you said, sometimes you don't want to give all the sauce.
I'm sitting here smiling, Chief, because I'm like, you're going to have your hands full, buddy. You're going to be a busy dude.
Well, the good thing is like I said, the city's been perfect in understanding and saying, hey, we want to give you the time, the ability, and the resources, most importantly, to have an effect on it and not just chase it around, have an effect on the problems.
Yeah. I've always, as I said earlier in this conversation, and Jason's heard me say this many times, I respect Lancaster for their desire to innovate and try new things. Because generally speaking, like local government and government in general is risk averse. That's not just a local government issue, right? I mean, government's risk averse for understandable reasons. They want to protect taxpayer money, and you make one mistake and they're going to be all over you, So I understand it. On the other hand, if you don't take some risk, you can't innovate. And I was having a conversation with a fellow a few months ago at a conference, and he was talking about innovation in cities and getting elected official buy-in on the reality that if you want innovation in your organization, as a council, you have to be able to tell your staff, it's okay for you to take a risk, right? Go make this happen. And hearing you, Jason, it sounds like your mayor and council said, we know there's opportunity here. There's going to be some risk to try something new, but we're a community worth investing in.
Absolutely. And they've done that for the 16 years I've been here. Whether it be energy or construction and innovation and property design, go down the list. Our fee structure, our law enforcement efforts. I mean, it's just one thing after another. They're willing to take a risk, and there frankly have been some failures. We don't hire Tripepi Smith to tell our failures, but all the successes we get on the bandwagon. I'm joking, but it's kind of true. But no, we have a lot of lists of successes where we've done well, and then what happens is the community builds on that, right? You do one thing that's like, what are those guys doing? Oh, it works. And they do another thing. What are those guys doing? Oh, it worked. And then before you know it, why wouldn't the hybrid model work? Why wouldn't hydrogen work? Why wouldn't everything else has worked? So let's go. So you get a community that's even supportive of that, because innovation is a community problem too. If you've got a mayor that wants to go out and change the world, and you got 5 citizens there who want to keep the world the same way, the citizens have to back this innovation too. It's a the 3-pronged. You got citizens, council, and staff, and fortunately we've had all 3 of those for a long period of time.
Yeah, seemingly. Well, that's exciting stuff. As always, it's good to hear a report from Lancaster and hear what you all are up to. If folks out there that are listening to this want to learn more about the programs you have going on there, Jason, how do people get a hold of you to ask any questions?
You can call Chief, and probably not a cell phone, but you can call Chief or call City Hall. We'll get you to Chief. And then as it rolls out, we're going to be tracking this stuff from a statistical perspective, and also a roadmap, right? What do we got to do with benefits? What do we got to do with hiring? What's the pay going to look like? Go down all those lists of things what are the operating procedures? How do you need to change your municipal code? What are the ordinances that need to get put in place? Kind of this, 101 to how to form a hybrid policing model that will hopefully at the end of the day be able to share with everybody that if you wanted to do it, 1, it can be done, 2, it can be done well, and 3, here's the roadmap.
Well, first, I would love to have you back here a year from now for a check-in, see how that progress has come and discuss some of those KPIs. Second, certainly would be great to see you all out on the conference circuit through a League of Cities meeting or a Contract Cities meeting where you get a chance to kind of share with the community about what you guys are up to as well. So that would be phenomenal. Yeah. Chief, I'll spare you giving up your contact information since Jason went ahead and intervened. I don't need your cell phone number, buddy, but I appreciate it. And that's today's report. So I want to thank Jason and Chief Armalin for joining us from the Public CEO team and myself, Ryder Todd Smith. Thank you for your time. We hope you learned something new and inspiring that will help you in your public service. Remember, PublicCEO has a daily newsletter that is free to those who sign up at PublicCEO.com. If you have feedback, questions, or guest suggestions for PublicCEO Report, please email editor@PublicCEO.com.